The concept of public interest litigation in India was pioneered largely by Pill jurisprudence in India was pioneered jointly by Justices P.N. Bhagavati and V.R. Krishna Iyer, who relaxed locus standi rules and developed epistolary jurisdiction to widen access to constitutional remedies. Choice D is the right choice. The doctrine of basic structure of the Constitution was first enunciated in which case? The basic structure doctrine was first propounded by a 13-judge bench in Keshavananda Bharati versus State of Kerala, 1973, which held that Parliament's amending power under Article 368 does not extend to altering the basic structure of the Constitution. B is the right choice. Keshavananda Bharati versus State of Kerala. The National Green Tribunal was established under the National Green Tribunal Act 2010 to provide effective and expeditious disposal of cases relating to environmental protection and conservation of forests and other natural resources. Choice D is the right choice. The National Green Tribunal Act 2010. Section 138 of the Negotiable Instruments Act 1881 deals with Section 138 of the Negotiable Instruments Act 1881 specifically criminalizes dishonor of a check on account of insufficiency of funds or because it exceeds the amount arranged to be paid, treating it as a quasi-criminal offense. Choice A. Dishonor of a check for insufficiency of funds. An advocate is required to maintain standards of professional conduct under Section 35 of the Advocates Act 1961, which read with Section 49(1)(c) and the BCA rules framed thereunder, sets out the standards of professional conduct expected of advocates and the consequences of professional misconduct. Choice A is the right choice. Under the 2013 Land Acquisition Act, consent of affected families is generally required when land is acquired for Section 2 of the Right to Fair Compensation and Transparency in Land Acquisition Act 2013 requires the consent of at least 80% of the affected families for acquisition of land for private projects and 70% for the public-private partnership projects, which, while acquisition by the government for its own use does not need consent. Private companies and public-private partnership projects. The doctrine of lifting the corporate veil is applied by courts to lifting the corporate veil is a judicial doctrine by which courts disregard a company's separate legal personality and look behind it to identify the real actors and attribute the company's acts and liabilities to them in cases of fraud, sham or evasion of tax. Soham's company, FitLife Private Limited, uses a logo confusingly similar to a registered mark. The aggrieved owner can sue for infringement under the Trademarks Act 1999. Choice B is the right choice. Under the BSA 2023, the burden of proving any particular fact lies on the person who wishes the court to believe in its existence. Choice A is the correct choice. Under the Consumer Protection Act 2019, the pecuniary jurisdiction of the District Commission is up to Rs 50 lakhs. Following the 2021 notification under the Consumer Protection Act 2019, the District Commission exercises pecuniary jurisdiction over consumer disputes where the value of goods or services paid as consideration does not exceed 50 lakhs. D is the right choice. The doctrine of last in, first out under industrial law applies to retrenchment of workmen. Section 25G of the Industrial Disputes Act 1947 codifies the last in, first out principle for retrenchment. An employer ordinarily must retrench the workman who was the last person employed in that category unless reasons are recorded for departing from this order. The doctrine of legitimate expectation in administrative law primarily protects a reasonable procedural or substantive expectation arising from prior conduct. Choice C is the correct choice. Section 173 of the BNSS 2023 corresponds to which section of the Code of Criminal Procedure 1973? Section 173 of the BNSS 2023 governs the registration of information relating to a cognizable offence, FIR, corresponding to Section 154 of the old CRPC 1973. D is the right answer. Under the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita 2023, the offence of murder is punishable under which section? Section 103 of the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita 2023 prescribes the punishment for the offence of murder, replicating the substance of Section 302 of the IPC 1860. Section 103. Choice C is the right choice. The doctrine of irretrievable breakdown of marriage as a ground for divorce in India is currently not a statutory ground but recognized by the Supreme Court under Article 142. D is the correct choice. Under the Legal Services Authorities Act 1987, the awards of a Lok Adalat are Section 21 of the Legal Services Authorities Act 1987 declares every award of a Lok Adalat to be deemed a decree of a civil court, final and binding on the parties with no appeal lying against it. So B is the right choice. Final and binding with no appeal. The doctrine of res judicata is codified in which provision of the Code of Civil Procedure 1908? Section 11 of the CPC codifies the doctrine of res judicata, barring courts from trying any suit or issue that has been finally decided between the same parties by a competent court. D is the right choice. Under the Income Tax Act 1961, the previous year is defined in Section 3 of the Income Tax Act 1961 defines previous year as the financial year April 1st to March 31st, immediately preceding the assessment year in which the income is assessed to tax. D is the right choice. Identity theft is a punishable offence under which section of the Information Technology Act 2000? Section 66C of the Information Technology Act 2000 specifically punishes identity theft, that is, fraudulent or dishonest use of another's electronic signature, password, or any other unique identification feature. Choice D is the right choice. Section 66C. Plea bargaining is provided for the BNSS 2023 under Chapter 23 of the Bharatiya Nagarik Suraksha Sanhita 2023 contains the codified plea bargaining regime, retaining the framework first introduced into the old CRPC by the 2005 amendment for offences not exceeding 7 years imprisonment and outside certain excluded categories. The right to education was inserted as Article 21A by which constitutional amendment? The 86th Amendment. The Constitution 86th Amendment Act 2002 inserted Article 21A guaranteeing free and compulsory education to all children between the ages of 6 and 14 years as a fundamental right. Under Section 9 of the CPC, civil courts have jurisdiction to try all suits of a civil nature except those expressly or impliedly barred. A is the right choice. Under the Transfer of Property Act 1882, mortgage is defined in Section 58 of the Transfer of Property Act 1882 defines mortgage as the transfer of an interest in specific immovable property for the purpose of securing the payment of money advanced or to be advanced, and goes on to enumerate the 6 kinds of mortgage recognized in Indian law. Section 58 D is the right choice. Aarti seeks divorce from Rajesh on the ground of cruelty. The relevant provision under the Hindu Marriage Act is Section 13(1) IA of the Hindu Marriage Act 1955 expressly recognizes cruelty, mental or physical, by either spouse after the solemnization of marriage as a ground for divorce. D is the right choice. Section 318 of the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita 2023 corresponds to which provision of the IPC 1860? Section 420, cheating and dishonestly inducing delivery. Section 318 of the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita 2023 is the recodified provision dealing with cheating and dishonestly inducing delivery of the property. C is the right choice. Section 65B of the Indian Evidence Act 1872, now corresponding to BSA, deals with admissibility of electronic records, including the requirement of an accompanying certificate, now carried forward in Section 63 of the BSA 2023. B is the right answer. Which schedule of the Constitution contains provisions relating to anti-defection law? The 10th schedule, inserted by the 52nd Constitutional Amendment in 1985, contains the anti-defection provisions disqualifying legislators who defect from their political parties. 10th schedule, choice C is the right choice. Under the BNSS, the magistrate may forward an accused to judicial custody for an aggregate period not exceeding Section 187 of the BNSS 2023 permits judicial custody for a total period of 60 days for offences punishable up to 10 years and 90 days for graver offences, after which the accused is entitled to default bail. A is the right choice. The maxim res ipsa loquitur is the law in the law of torts means the thing speaks for itself. Res ipsa loquitur is a Latin maxim in the law of torts, meaning literally the thing speaks for itself. A is the correct choice. Temporary injunctions and interlocutory orders are governed by which order of the CPC? Order 39 of the CPC, comprising Rule 1 to 5, governs the grant of temporary injunctions and interlocutory orders by a civil court to preserve the subject matter of a suit and to restrain injurious conduct pending adjudication. B is the right choice. Under the Payment of Gratuity Act 1972, gratuity is payable on completion of continuous service of 5 years. Section 4.1 of the Payment of Gratuity Act 1972 provides that gratuity is payable to an employee on termination of employment after he has rendered continuous service of not less than 5 years, with carved out exceptions for death or disablement. D is the right choice. A confession made to a police officer is, under the BSA 2023, inadmissible against the accused except in limited circumstances. Choice D is the correct choice. Goods and Services Tax in India is levied under GST is levied in India under the CGST Act 2017, the IGST Act 2017 and the UTGST Act 2017, the GST Compensation to States Act 2017 and the corresponding state GST enactments, all rooted in the 101st Constitutional Amendment. An appeal against an order of the State Bar Council Disciplinary Committee lies to the Bar Council of India. Section 37 of the Advocates Act 1961 provides for an appeal to the Bar Council of India against any order passed by the Disciplinary Committee of a State Bar Council in matters of professional misconduct. A is the correct choice. In which case did the Supreme Court substantially relax the rule of locus standi for pill? In SP Gupta versus Union of India, popularly known as the Judges Transfer Case, Justice Bhagwati relaxed the traditional rule of locus standi, allowing any person acting bona fide and having sufficient interest to maintain a pill for the enforcement of public right. A is the correct choice. Under Section 84 of the IPC, an act of a person of unsound mind is excused if at the time he was incapable of knowing the nature of the act or that it was wrong. An arbitral award can be set aside by a court under which provision of the Arbitration and Conciliation Act 1996. Section 34 of the Arbitration and Conciliation Act 1996 sets out the limited grounds and procedure for challenging and setting aside a domestic arbitral award. C is the correct choice. Under the Indian Contract Act 1872, an agreement without consideration is generally void unless it falls within the exception in section 25. The statutory exceptions of natural love and affection between near relations, past voluntary services, and a promise to pay a time-barred debt. Choice A is the correct choice. Under the Special Marriage Act 1954, the notice of intended marriage must be given to the marriage officer. Section 5 of the Special Marriage Act 1954 requires the parties to give a notice of intended marriage to the marriage officer at least 30 days in advance of the solemnization. B is the correct choice. The inherent powers of civil code are preserved under which section of the CPC? Section 151 of the CPC saves the inherent powers of the civil code to make such orders as may be necessary for the ends of justice or to prevent abuse of the process of the court. A is the right choice. The concurrent list of the 7th schedule does not include which of the following subjects? Defense of India is a union subject under entry 1 of the list 1 union list 7th schedule, where criminal law and procedure, education and marriage and divorce are all subjects of the concurrent list. A. Defense of India is the correct choice. Under the Bharatiya Nagarik Suraksha Sanhita 2023, the FIR for a cognizable offence is to be registered under Section 173 of BNSS. It governs the registration of information relating to a cognizable offence, FIR, corresponding to Section 154 of the old CRPC. A is the right choice. The principle that no one shall be a judge in his own cause is known as Nemo judex in causa sua. No one shall be a judge in his own cause is the rule against bias under natural justice, requiring decision makers to be impartial and free from personal interest in the cause before them. D is the correct choice. Nemo judex in causa sua. Maintenance to a divorced Muslim woman is governed by following the Daniel Latifi versus Union of India 2001. Maintenance of a divorced Muslim woman is primarily governed by Muslim Woman Protection of Rights on Divorce Act 1986, with the parties maintaining the option under Section 5 to be governed by the Sections 125 to 128 of CRPC by joint affidavit. Under the Specific Relief Act 1963, specific performance is now generally after the Specific Relief Amendment Act 2018, specific performance has been made the general rule rather than a discretionary remedy, subject only to the limited statutory exceptions in sections 14 and 16 of the Act. D is the correct choice. And the presumption regarding genuineness of a 30-year-old document produced from proper custody is a rebuttable presumption of genuineness. Section 90 of the Indian Evidence Act revised a rebuttable presumption of the execution and genuineness of documents which are 30 years old or more and are produced from property custody, from proper custody. The general exception of private defense of the body under the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita extends to causing death only when there is a reasonable apprehension of death or grievous hurt. An ex parte decree may be set aside on application of the defendant under Order 9, Rule 13 empowers the defendant to apply for setting aside an ex parte decree on proving that summons was not duly served or that he was prevented by sufficient cause from appearing when the suit was called on for hearing. B is the correct choice. Which of the following is not an essential ingredient of a summons case under the BNSS 2023? Offense is non-cognizable in every case. A summons case under Section 2W of the CRPC carried forward in the BNSS is a case relating to an offense not being a warrant case. Reema, an Indian citizen, is denied a government job solely on the ground of place of birth. Which article is violated? Article 16(2) of the Constitution expressly prohibits the state from discriminating against any citizen in matters of public employment on grounds only of religion, race, caste, sex, descent, place of birth, residence, or any of them. So Article 16(2)(a) is the correct choice. Under the Motor Vehicles Act 1988, claims for compensation in motor accident cases are determined by Motor Accidents Claims Tribunal, which has exclusive jurisdiction to adjudicate claims for compensation arising from motor accidents. Motor Accidents Claims Tribunals. B is the right choice. Under the Trademarks Act 1999, a registered trademark is initially valid for a period of 10 years. As per Section 25(1) of the Trademarks Act 1999, which provides that the registration of a trademark shall be for a period of 10 years, renewable for further periods of 10 years on payment of the prescribed fee. Sunita lodges a complaint of dowry harassment. The investigating officer fails to register an FIR. Her remedy under BNSS is application to the magistrate under Section 175(3) of BNSS. Section 175(3) of the BNSS 2023 empowers a magistrate on a complaint by an aggrieved person whose FIR is not registered or who is dissatisfied with the police inaction to direct registration and investigation of a cognizable offence corresponding to Section 156(3) of the old CRPC. The 4 labour codes consolidating Indian labour laws include the Code on Wages 2019, Social Security 2010, Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions 2020, Industrial Relations 2020, all of the above. All of the above is the right choice. The court may dismiss a bill with cause if it finds the petition to be a disguised private interest litigation or frivolous. The President of India is elected by an electoral college consisting of, under Article 54, the President of India is elected by an electoral college consisting of the elected members of both houses of the Parliament and the elected members of the legislative assemblies of the states, including the NCT of Delhi and Puducherry. The offence of organized crime is dealt with under which section of the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita? Section 111 of the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita 2023 introduces organized crime as a distinct codified offence in general criminal law. Section 67 of the Information Technology Act 2000 deals with Section 67 of the Information Technology Act 2000 makes punishable the publishing or transmitting in electronic form of any material which is lascivious or appeals to the prurient interest or tends to deprave and corrupt persons likely to read, see or hear it. D is the correct choice. Under the Income Tax Act 1961, residential status of an individual is determined as per Section 6 of the Income Tax Act 1961 lays down the tests for determining the residential status of an individual: Hindu undivided family, firm and company, which in turn governs the scope of taxable income. Section C. Choice C. Section 6. C is the right choice. Land acquisition in India is currently governed primarily by the right to fair compensation and transparency in land acquisition, rehabilitation, and Resettlement Act 2013, popularly known as Land Acquisition Act 2013. Choice D is the correct choice. Under the BSA 2023, an admission is relevant and may be proved against the person who makes it under Section 23 of the BSA 2023, corresponding to Section 21 of the Old Evidence Act, provides that admissions are relevant and may be proved as against the person who makes them, subject to the recognized exceptions. Section 23, choice D is the correct choice. Under the Hindu Marriage Act 1955, the minimum age for marriage of a male is Section 5(3) of the Hindu Marriage Act 1955 prescribes the minimum age of 21 years for bridegroom and 18 years for the bride at the time of marriage. So, C is the correct choice. The Mediation Act 2023 makes pre-litigation mediation voluntary with limited mandatory categories notified by the government. Section 5 of the Mediation Act 2023, as ultimately enacted, has made pre-litigation mediation voluntary, with the central government empowered to notify specific categories where it may be mandatory. B is the correct choice. The doctrine of frustration of contract is codified in the Indian contract under Section 56 of the Indian Contract Act 1872 codifies the doctrine of frustration, providing that an agreement to do an act impossible in itself or which subsequently becomes impossible or unlawful becomes void. Under the Companies Act 2013, a one-person company is defined in Section 262 of the Companies Act 2013, which defines a one-person company as a company having only one person as a member, introduced for the first time in Indian company law. Section 262. B is the correct choice. An order rejecting a plaint under Order 7 Rule 11 CPC is appealable as a decree under Section 2(2). Under Section 2(2) of the CPC, an order rejecting a plaint under Order 7 Rule 11 is deemed a decree and is therefore appealable as a decree. The polluter pays principle was authoritatively recognized in Indian law in Indian Council for Enviro Legal Action versus Union of India, MC Mehta versus Kamal Nath, Vellore Citizens Welfare Forum versus Union of India, in all three of them. So all of the above is the right answer. C should have been in the place of D. Please note. Under the Bar Council of India rules, an advocate is generally prohibited from engaging in any other employment or business while practicing, save with permission. A defective product caused injury to a consumer. Under the Consumer Protection Act 2019, the manufacturer is liable under product liability provisions in Chapter 6. A is the correct choice. Under the BNSS 2023, electronic communication of summons and warrants is recognized under Section 530 of the BNSS 2023 expressly enables trials, inquiries and proceedings including issuance, service and execution of summons and warrants to be conducted in electronic mode through audio-video means. Choice A is the correct choice. A decree is defined in Section 2.2 of the CPC means formal expression of an adjudication conclusively determining rights of parties. With regard to all or any of the matters in controversy in the suit. D is the correct choice. The power of Supreme Court to do complete justice in any case is found in Article 142(1) of the Constitution empowers the Supreme Court in the exercise of its jurisdiction to pass such decree or make such order as is necessary for doing complete justice in any cause or matter pending before it. A is the correct choice. Under the Hindu Succession Amendment Act 2005, a daughter in a Mitakshara coparcenary is a coparcener by birth with same rights as a son. Choice A is the correct choice. Under the doctrine of estoppel, codified in Bharatiya Sakshya Adhiniyam, the person estopped is the one who, by declaration, act or omission, causes another to believe and act on it. A sale of immovable property of value 100 or more under the Transfer of Property Act must be effected by Section 54 of the Transfer of Property Act 1882 requires the sale of a tangible immovable property of the value 100 rupees or more to be effected only by a registered instrument in order to be legally valid. C is the correct choice. Under the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita 2023, the punishment for a terrorist act is provided in Section 113 of the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita 2023, which codifies the offence of terrorist act within general criminal law for the first time, mirroring the substance of corresponding UAPA provisions and prescribing severe punishment up to death. C is the correct choice. The Central Administrative Tribunal was established under Article 323A, read with the Administrative Tribunals Act 1985. Choice C is the correct choice. Under Article 356, the President's rule in a state can initially be imposed for a maximum period of 6 months. Article 356(4) provides that a proclamation of President's rule after parliamentary approval remains in force for 6 months at a time, extendable up to a maximum of 3 years on prescribed conditions. B is the right choice. Ravi sues Sahil for money. Sahil resides at Delhi. Cause of action arose at Pune. Suit may be filed at either Delhi or Pune. Section 20 of the CPC permits a suit for money to be filed where the defendant resides, carries on business or personally works for gain, or where the cause of action wholly or in part arose. An order under Section 144 CRPC, now Section 163 BNSS, can ordinarily remain in force for a maximum period of 2 months. Section 144(4) of the CRPC 1973, now Section 163 of the BNSS 2023, provides that any order made under the section shall not, in first instance, remain in force for more than 2 months from its making, with limited extension by the state government. An advocate is found guilty of professional misconduct. The matter is to be inquired into by the Disciplinary Committee of the State Bar Council. B is the correct choice. Disciplinary Committee of the State Bar Council. Soham purchases a refrigerator that explodes due to a manufacturing defect, injuring him. His best claim under contract law is for damages for breach of an implied warranty of fitness. Section 16 of the Sale of Goods Act 1930 implies a condition of fitness for purpose where the buyer makes known the particular purpose to the seller, and a breach of this implied warranty entitles the buyer to damages under the Indian Contract Act 1872. Under the Arbitration and Conciliation Act 1996, the appointment of arbitrators when parties fail to agree is provided in Section 11 of the Arbitration and Conciliation Act 1996 as amended, empowers the Supreme Court for international commercial arbitration and the High Courts for domestic arbitration or any person or institution designated by them to appoint arbitrators where parties fail to agree. The Bharatiya Sakshya Adhiniyam 2023 explicitly recognizes which of the following as primary evidence. B. Electronic and digital records produced from proper custody. Choice B is the correct choice. Bill can be filed in the Supreme Court of India primarily under Article 32, which Dr. Ambedkar called the heart and soul of the Constitution, guarantees the right to move the Supreme Court for the enforcement of fundamental rights. The constitutional source of Bill in the Supreme Court. D is the correct choice. Under the Industrial Disputes Act 1947, the term industrial dispute is defined in Section 2K of the Industrial Disputes Act 1947 defines industrial dispute as any dispute or difference between employers and employees, employers and workmen, or workmen and workmen, which is connected with the employment, non-employment, terms of employment, or conditions of labor. Amit, intending only to cause grievous hurt, beats Vijay, who unexpectedly dies. Amit is liable for culpable homicide not amounting to murder under BNS section 105. C is the correct choice. The constitutional power of the Union to levy income tax other than agricultural income flows from Entry 82 of List 1, Union List, 7th Schedule, expressly empowers Parliament to levy taxes on income other than agricultural income, which is the constitutional source for the Income Tax Act 1961. A Sapinda relationship under the Hindu Marriage Act extends to how many generations? Section 3F of the Hindu Marriage Act 1955 defines Sapinda relationship as extending up to the third generation through the mother and the fifth generation through the father, both inclusive of the person concerned. C is the correct choice. The maximum period of police custody permissible at the initial stage under the BNSS is Section 187 of the BNSS retains the basic 15-day cap on police custody at the initial stage, though the new regime permits this police custody to be granted in fragments within the first 40 or 60 days of total detention, depending on the gravity of the offense. The maximum period of police custody under Article 32, the Supreme Court can issue a writ of habeas corpus against both state and private persons in certain cases. C is the correct choice. Under Section 89 CPC, the court can refer parties to which of the following modes of dispute settlement. Section 89 of the CPC, inserted by 1999 amendment, mandates the court, where elements of a settlement exist, to refer the dispute to arbitration, conciliation, judicial settlement including lok adalat, or mediation. A is the correct choice. The rule of strict liability was first laid down in Rylands versus Fletcher. The rule in Rylands versus Fletcher, 1868, first established strict liability. B is the correct choice. Which of the following is a new offense specifically introduced by the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita? Section 304 of the BNS 2023 carves out snatching as a distinct, newly codified offense with its own punishment, separate from theft and robbery. Extortion, robbery, and dacoity were all already offenses under the old IPC. So, snatching, choice B, is the correct choice. The remedy of rescission of contract is dealt with in the Specific Relief Act under Sections 27 to 30 of the Specific Relief Act 1963 deal with rescission of contracts, setting out the cases in which rescission may be adjudged, the procedure and the powers of the court. C is the correct choice. Under the Bharatiya Sakshya Adhiniyam 2023, the term evidence is defined in Section 2(1)(e) of the BSA 2023 defines evidence to include all statements which the court permits or requires to be made before it by witnesses, oral evidence, and all documents including electronic and digital records produced for inspection, documentary evidence. Under the Muslim personal law, Shariat, Application Act 1937, the right of a Muslim woman to seek dissolution of marriage is governed primarily by the Resolution of Muslim Marriages Act 1939. A is the correct choice. Anticipatory bail under the Code of Criminal Procedure 1973 was governed by which provision before its replacement? Section 438 of the Code of Criminal Procedure CRPC 1973 was the provision governing anticipatory bail before its replacement, empowering the High Court or Court of Session to grant bail to a person apprehending arrest on accusation of a non-bailable offence. The procedure for execution of decrees is dealt with in which order of the CPC? Order 21. 21st order of the CPC, the longest order in the code, lays down the elaborate procedure for execution of decrees and orders, including modes of execution, attachment and sale of property. B is the right choice. Finally, which article of the Constitution of India guarantees the right against self-incrimination? Article 23 of the Constitution embodies the protection against testimonial compulsion. That is, no person accused of any offence shall be compelled to be a witness against himself, the constitutional foundation of the right against self-incrimination. D. Article 23 is the correct choice.